Okay, good morning. We'll start now. We'll discuss today Article 6 of the 1987 Constitution, okay, which is the Legislative Department. Okay, to orient you first on the different department that we are going to discuss this morning, there are actually three main departments of the government. One is that legislative, executive, and the judicial or judiciary. Okay, so if you look at the structure of the Philippine government, I want to see that the three branches are on the top. It is not the president which is the top. Okay, so being equal, then it must stand on the same footing and they have equal power. They can check each other, and then there should be a balance, okay, between the different departments. Why is it so? Because our country, if you recall Article 2, Section 1, okay, Philippines is a democratic and republican government. Authority emanates from the people. So it means that there are three departments equal in each other, and they have the principle of check and balance. Okay, one department will be checked by another to see to it that there is no abuse of authority. Now, these three branches, executive, legislative, and judiciary, all talks about law. Okay, legislative department, a department that makes the law. Executive department, department that executes the law. While judicial or judiciary, a department that will execute, interprets the law. In case of conflict as to its meaning, then it is the judiciary, which power is vested in the Supreme Court, and other collegiate courts exercise that power. Now, going to the first one, which is very important, the legislative. Okay, the power shall be vested in Congress of the Philippines, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives, except to the extent reserved to the people by the provision on initiative and referendum. So take note of the exemption, reserved to the people by the provision on initiative, meaning the people can actually make a law. Okay, it's called initiative, or by referendum when they are asked to comment or whether they approve a certain legislation. So, what's the composition of the Senate? So, there are 24 senators and shall be elected at large by the qualified voters of the Philippines as may be provided by law. Okay, that as may be provided by law also includes the right of an absentee voters. Those who are abroad shall also have the right to choose their senators. Okay, there are three positions that can be elected by the absentee voters. One is president, vice president, senators, and party list. Okay, not a district representative. Why? Because they are not residing in the Philippines. Okay, and a district representative is presumed that they represent the district, meaning you are the voter of that place. But in that case, if they are not around, then they are not allowed to choose that. Now, why is it that during election we only elect 12 senators? Okay, right now we have to choose only 12, but there are actually 24. Well, the rationale behind this is that the reason behind is, of course, we want somebody to take care of the government while others are busy campaigning. But it all started during the 1987 Constitution when we elect 24 senators, but we rank them. Upon the approval of the 1987 Constitution, okay, which was approved February 2, 1987, it states that the choosing of the senators will be alternative. Okay, but on the first time we choose 24, but we rank them. Those who garnered 24 out of the first 12 rather, the highest 12 will serve for 6 years, while those in the 13th and in the 24th, 13th to 24th will serve for 3 years. Which is why 3 years thereafter we choose another 6, replacing the weakest of the 24th, and by that time their tenure or the number of years is 6 years. So meaning every 3 years there will be 12 senators will be elected, um, or, um, which is now alternative every 3 years starting that election which we voted for the first 12. Now, the no person shall be senator unless he is a natural born. So take note of those qualification to be a senator. Okay, and on the day of election, at least 25, 35 years old or of age and able to read and write. Okay, registered voter, a resident of the Philippines for not less than 2 years immediately preceding the day of election. Now, what is the rationale behind all this qualification? Okay, like 35 years old, natural born, able to read and write, a resident of the Philippines for not less than 2 years, a registered voter. Why? Why is it so? What's the rationale or the philosophy behind all this? Well, as we all know, if you are natural born, probably the presumption is that you are loyal to the country because you are born here. Unlike some citizens, which is naturalized, they may not be born here in the Philippines, so they may not be loyal. So in case of trouble right now, they may go to another country, leaving our country. Okay? So what is the effect? There will be nobody who will die for our country. So that qualification again requires to be a natural born as defined in Article 12. Okay, you know who are those? There is a lecture I posted in YouTube. Just watch that lecture, okay, on citizenship. And on suffrage. Okay, right now we focus on Article 6. Now, on the day of election, at least 35. Why 35? We always know that as soon as you um, grow in age, as you mature, your mindset is also matured and you know what to do, and probably you gained wisdom as soon as you attain that age. Okay, so as young as you are, you may not have that same maturity as those who are 35 years old. So those who are 35, the presumption is that they have the wisdom to decide what's best for the country. So the higher the position, it requires the number of higher uh, a certain age. Okay, in olden times, during the time of Aristotle and Plato, they said that those who govern must be 40 years old because by the time they already know how, they have now gathered the wisdom. Okay, they are knowledgeable in archery and mathematics. Okay, and philosophy. Now, able to read and write. Why is it only able to read and write? So that there is an equal opportunity for everybody. In a democratic country like ours, there should be no monopoly. Just that only those who are learned and those who are rich, and normally those who goes to college are only rich people. So that there will be equality of whatever standing you have in life. The qualification must only be able to read and write. A registered voter, of course. Okay. Um, in that place. But in the case of senators, long as it's anywhere in the Philippines, and a resident of the Philippines for at least 2 years. Why is it so? It is a residency requirement. Okay, such that as you soon make a law for the country should understand its situation for that 2 years. Okay, the 2 years is an allowance for you to know the problems, what's going on, and therefore, thereafter, you may make a law based on your observation. Now, in section 4, the term of office of a senator shall be 6 years and shall commence unless provided by law at the noon of 30th day of June, on June 30. Okay, noon is 12 noon. Okay, next following their election. So the election is every second Monday of May on the June of 30 on the noon. Then they immediately function as the duly elected senator or other offices or other officers. Okay, so term of office 6 years. Can they run for another 6 years? Yes. Okay. After 6 years, after second term, then no more, and they can run for another term, but they are the third is not allowed anymore. So the proof of that is found in the line below. No senator shall serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. Okay. The voluntary renunciation of an office of any length of time shall not be considered as an interruption in the continuity of his service for the full term for which he was elected. So what do you mean by voluntary? Okay. So if he resigns, okay, prior to election, then that is not considered as a what? Interruption. Why is it so? Why is it important? Because if you resign, you did not continue, you may later on be run for another because there was an interruption. The conclusion of the law is that that is not an interruption because it is voluntary. Okay? Because you may be wise and you want to run again is after serving for 5 years, you resign and then you run again for another 6 years after 1 year, because after 1 year will be another your term expires. So that voluntary renunciation is not considered as an interruption, okay, for the continuity of his service for the full term for which he was elected. You memorize that. So you don't have any other answer. Okay, in case you will be facing with a case where a senator voluntarily resigns, or a case filed against him but he voluntarily resigns, and then after that he ran again for another term, okay, that voluntary renunciation is not considered as an interruption for in the continuity for his service for the full term for which he was elected. That is the answer. Okay, so memorize that. It will come out in our test. Supposing that you will be given a situation where the senator did not finish but resigns, but you have to analyze whether it is indeed a renunciation, a voluntary or an involuntary. Okay, because there is a very thin line that distinguishes a voluntary renunciation from an involuntary. Because if it is an involuntary, he is capable, or he is allowed to run for the next term. Okay, example, he was dismissed from service after 5 years. Can he run for another? Yes, for another term. After what? Let us say after serving the office for 5 years, and then later on he was dismissed. Okay, and then there's another election. Can he run for another year? Yes, because that was what? Involuntary. Now, so take note of that. Okay. So section 5, paragraph 1, okay, of the same article, the House of Representatives shall be composed of not more than 250 members. 250 members. Okay. 200. You memorize that. The half of 500, that's 250. Why would I say that? Because it's an important number. Okay, so you will know later on its significance in casting the vote. Okay, let's say there are cases where they have to decide by majority or by two-thirds. Okay, you should know what's the specific number of the House of Representatives that require certain action to be valid. Okay, how many votes that is required. Okay, unless otherwise fixed below, who shall be elected for or from the legislative districts apportioned among the provinces, cities, and the metropolitan Manila area in accordance with the number of their respective inhabitants and on the basis of a uniform and progressive ratio. Okay, and those who, as provided by law, shall be elected through a partyless system of a registered national, regional, sectoral parties or organizations. Now, to discuss in advance what is the composition of the party list, it should not be more than 20% of the 250. The 250, 20% of that comes from the party list system. Okay? And what are these party list system? These are the groups. And there are groups that are mandatory. One of that, which I just mentioned, I'm going to discuss that later on. Women, youth, labor group. There are many others. I want to be concrete about it when we discuss in the next section. Now, so in every 250,000, okay, 250,000, it must or it can qualify to have a district representative. Now, for a province, regardless of the number of inhabitants, but if it is considered a province, then it is entitled to one district representative. Okay? Now, the party list representative shall constitute the 20% of the total number of representatives, including those under the party list. Okay? For 3 consecutive terms after the ratification of the Constitution, one-half of the seats allocated by the party list shall be filled as provided by law by the selection or election from the labor. Okay? So what are these? I will have to be very definite. So this is the one I'm talking about. Okay, I mentioned labor, the peasants, the urban poor, indigenous cultural communities, women, youth. Okay? And such other sectors as may be provided by law except religious sector. So there are actually many, but all of these, the one I mentioned, okay, labor, peasant, urban poor, indigenous cultural communities, women, youth, it is a requirement because it is mandated by law. Okay, but for women, I think it is represented by the Gabriela. For the youth, kabataan, but the problem with kabataan is that they are noted for being leftist. So I know some of you may be members of that, but that is noted for a while. I have to charge. Okay, let's be frank about it because I am concerned of your future. Maybe you may be blinded by the sweet promises of these groups. Okay, the left leaning. Okay, it's good that we will have groups that will perhaps balance the system, like being always at the left leaning. Okay, you know, you may be, I don't know if you are into it, but you may know some people are not aware that they're actually bringing the youth are actually inclining now to the left wing. Okay, and the left wing we know is noted for being the communist. Okay, all the while you are thinking that this is just an exercise of a right, but in the end are you become an enemy of the state. Okay, I don't want to mention, but there are actually groups that are now noted to be left leaning. One of which is even the ACT party list. They represent teachers, but they are noted to be organizing groups of youth in somewhere in Mindanao. Okay, when the teachers were deceived, all the while we were thinking that it represents the rights of the teachers, but they're not. Okay, they are now noted to be left-leaning, and these are Maoist or Marxist. Okay, we understand very much of the Marxist because we read its book from cover to cover, and there's no, well, it's actually good an exercise of an academic freedom, but if the students, the youth lives will be destroyed simply because they're joining that group and they are not aware that they are now brainwashing, or um, they now become an enemy of the state. Well, it's our duty as well to protect you. Okay, so right now there are more or less 30 plus NGOs, according to the police or even the president's report, that are noted for being connected with the left wing. Left wing meaning always against the government. Okay, and that idea comes from Karl Marx in his book The Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. I admire Karl Marx, but if if it will result to always in trouble and the lives of the student will be at stake, well, it's our right as well to protect you from the impending misfortune. Now, so each legislative district shall comprise, as far as practicable, contiguous, okay, compact and adjacent territory. Each city with a population of at least, okay, 250,000, or each province shall have at least one representative. This is the one I'm talking about a while ago. Okay, within 3 years following the return of every census, the Congress shall make a reapportionment of a legislative district based on the standards provided by this section. So it is the duty of the um, census, Philippine Statistics Office, to conduct this every 3 years. So no person shall be a member of the House of Rep unless, again, he is a natural born of the Philippines on the day of election, at least 25. Okay? So, Senator, 35. House of Rep, 25. Able to then write. Okay? And except in the party list where he must only be a registered voter in the district. Okay? And a resident thereof for a period of at least of not less than 1 year immediately preceding the election. So as to residency for House of Rep, it's only 1 year, while Senator, it's 2 years. Okay, he must be a registered voter except, okay, for the party list. He may not be a registered voter in the district as long as he is a bona fide member of that organization. It's not bona fide. It's a Latin term. So do not read it as if it is an English word. No, it's a Latin word. So pronounce it as bona fide, meaning good faith. Good faith. Bona, good. Bono, good. Bona, it was changed. It declines or not declines. No, no, declines. Declensions. It's called the declension in Latin for nouns and adjectives. If it's verbs, it's called conjugation. No, no, it's the other way around. Okay, so bono is you have to change the last letter if it's a feminine gender to a to make it a enough to make it a feminine gender. O is a masculine gender. So it must rhyme with your adjective. Now, members of the House of Representatives shall be elected for a term of 3 years. We shall begin, okay, at the noon still of June, following the election. Election again is every second Monday of May. Now, no member of the House of Reps shall serve for more than 3 consecutive terms. For senators, how many years? No senator shall serve for more than 2 consecutive terms, and each term is 6 years. Here, for House of Rep, it's 3 years. Okay? And they can run for another 3 terms. So meaning 3 times 3, it's 9 years. They can serve straight 9 years. For senators, 6 plus 6, 12 years. They can serve for straight 12 years. Okay, after that, they can no longer run. They become ineligible, okay, to run for that same office. But can they run for another office? Yes, they're allowed. Okay, that's how politicians circumvent the law. So they do not want that they will become unemployed. So they make it a point that if they can no longer serve for that term, then they can qualify for another office. Okay, that's how they survive. After all, okay, knowing all that, life is for what? Survival. Okay, so their term ends every election, and that is why they have to perpetuate and perhaps receive still the same salary. So the only way is to buy the vote and later on um, be compensated by the businesses, by the business permit that they're going to sign. Now, in case of vacancy in the Senate or in the House of Rep, a special election may be called to fill such a vacancy in a manner prescribed by law, but the senator or a member of House of Rep thus elected shall serve only for the unexpired term. So again, if there's a vacancy, it could either be an involuntary renunciation, okay, and which causes the vacancy. If that's the case, there will be a special election. If it's too far, but if it's too near to the election, it may not be called. They will just wait for another election. Okay, but there is a rule on that when to conduct for special election or when not to conduct. Now, as to salaries of senators, so you may be interested. Okay, after all, most of the politicians are run only for the salary, not sometimes for glory. And on top of the salary, they also receive another amount. Look at that. Look at those who become leaders. Okay, I've been watching TikTok and I know who are those richest people. If it is true, then Vladimir Putin is the richest man in the world. Okay, getting all this money from the oligarch and the oil depot. Now, salaries of the senators and members of the House of Reps shall be determined by law. No increase shall be in said compensation shall take effect until after the expiration of the full term of the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives approving such increase. Why is it so? Why is it that they are not entitled to, they cannot make a law, then pass through the, and then after a year it will be effective, increasing their salary? No. Why? Otherwise, that's self-serving. Okay? And there is what conflict of interest. You make a law that will increase your salary. That's ridiculous. That's stupidity. You only serve for your own sake. Your your job is only to get money. Okay? Um Now, Section 11. The senator or member of the House of Reps shall in all offenses punishable for not more than 6 years shall be privileged from arrest while the Congress is in session. So take note, you you will be given a situation where a senator commits an offense, is punished for less than 6 years. He was arrested. Is it allowed? No, it's not. Why? It's very clear under Section 11. If they commits a crime and while in session, and the meaning of in session, even if they're in their house, as long as it's within the session period, which actually starts on certain months like July up to December, that's in session. So even if they are not in the hall, as long as they are in session, okay, meaning of session, they continually go appear in Congress, okay, even if they go to their house and go back again for the next day, that's still covered within the Congress session, and they cannot be arrested if the crime committed is not more than 6 years. What's the rationale or philosophy behind this? Well, how can they make law for the country if they are arrested? Sometimes the enemy is so wise, they implicate a crime so that they will not be around and so that the bill will be passed without their objection. Okay, so they are really wise, but I do not encourage, and I do not encourage you to be like that. Okay, always be in good faith. Although this is a government school, but it's always be at best, be the best if we always behave like as if we are a graduate of a sectarian school. Okay, so sometimes parents are proud that their students, their children graduate in a Catholic school. Okay, but it's still the same if you only behave and listen to your professors. And sometimes those students are even in government and in public in sectarian schools sometimes behave like um I know it's all or really depends on the students. No, I was thinking then of this may be uploaded in YouTube and they might be hearing all these statements. So I am sometimes cautious. Although I'm aware it is part of academic freedom, but I don't want comment when I upload this. Okay, but anyway, that's part of it. I am criticizing some of the schools in my upload. Well, that's part of a debate in academic debate. They may agree with me or not agree with, but that's the part of academic freedom, and I'm sure I am safe, and that's my defense. No member shall be questioned or be held liable for any place, for any speech or debate in Congress or in any committee thereof. Okay? So, that's why if you observe some of the senators, they just say anything under the sun, okay? Or under the moon. Okay? They can say freely if they are in a privilege. And the meaning of a privileged speech is when they are asked to say something on a certain issue, and that period is called a privileged speech, and no one can question it. Okay, you are you are you are free to say anything. Okay, you may be criticized later on, but that time given to you is your privilege to say anything, express yourself as if you are the birds in the sky, free to roam around. Okay, and no one will no member shall question or be held liable for any place, for any speech or debate in Congress or in any committee thereof. Okay? So, you're actually totally free here to say anything. So, this should be given a privilege to say what they had in mind, because this is a democratic country, and they should be given that power to express themselves. Now, on I will not discuss more of a specific or concrete case on this one, just an overview. Otherwise, if I discuss cases, late cases, like case of Santiago, Senator Santiago, it will take time and we cannot discuss the entire constitution. Okay? So, rest assured, or if you get given a time to deeper your understanding in every section, read books or cases that will enhance your understanding of this. What I discuss are just general rule and a specific case, but without mentioning the details. Okay, so we still have more or less more than 10 articles, and we're still in 6 article 6. So no senator or members of House of Rep may hold any other office or employment. No, I forgot section 12. All members of the Senate and House of Reps shall, upon assumption of office, make a full disclosure of their financial and business interest. Okay? They shall notify the House concerned of any potential conflict of interest that may arise from the filing of a proposed legislation of which they are authors. What is the reason behind this, or what's your understanding of this? It simply means that when they assume office, or even those who are appointed, okay, not elective. Senators, House of Rep, these are elective. Even president are elective. Like us, we are appointed. Okay. Although we are both governed by civil service rules, but okay, the difference, there's no actually different, but their term ends up when they will no longer be elected, or they lost in the election. Whereas to the submission of this requirement before employment, that applies to all, whether you are elective or appointed. Okay, so upon assumption of an office, okay, when we were admitted into work in government, we have to submit our um interest, conflict of interest, like you have to declare in your statement of assets and liabilities. Before, it's called assets and liabilities, but now they include net worth. Okay, before it was only um, statements of assets and liabilities, and now they include n net worth. Okay, the net worth is the total, the after you state there the assets minus the liabilities. Assets are the properties that you bought, like cars, real properties like houses, and deduct that by your liabilities, like loan in the Pag-ibig, loan from the GSIS. Those are liabilities, and the remaining will be called the net worth. That will be submitted every year, okay, from the time of appointment or from the time of election after winning. So what will happen if the employee did not submit? Okay, so you know the case of a Supreme Court justice who did not submit her statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth. She was um it's not actually criminal, but the people might be looking at your income. If it if it fits with your lifestyle or correspond to your lifestyle. If your income is let's say 20,000 or 40,000, but your you bought a luxury car, you live in a very big house, that may not correspond to your income, and the presumption is that that money comes from an ill-gotten wealth, okay, or from corruption. So there will be case filed against you in the ombudsman, okay, for graft and corruption. So that SALN should be submitted every before April 15. So right now, in our case, we already submitted as early as April 15. So I think last week is the last day. So I end up here. I'll be talking about some other things.